went into the civilian sector. And at that time, I went in directly into consulting and engineering. And there were several vertical industries that I saw that were very troubled. One of them being the financial industry, the healthcare industry, and obviously the insurance and securities. And the reason they were troubled is, you know, there's no quick, cheap, and easy solutions to anything if you're a consultant. As a matter of fact, the general rule of thumb was to say, pick two, because that's about what we were going to give them as basically their affordability, because we can't give them all three. And you know, that troubled me. So when I took on a position within the financial industry as a chief information officer, I started digging deep into all of our basically technology plan, and I was able to actually fulfill about 80% of that plan with what I had already learned, what I already knew, and that was the client, the server, the storage, the network environment, everything that was really important to communicate. But the one thing that I really needed to understand better was the security aspect. I started doing some research. I ended up digging through over 120 different possible solutions in security. And I didn't just want that stateful firewall, even if it was going to be the best of breed, or if it was going to be that one company that I knew would basically be there as a name for the next 20 years. But I wanted to make sure that I had the longevity to be able to do all of the things that I saw as business processes for the future. Because that's really what I am. I'm not just an information systems engineer, but I'm a process engineer. You have to be able to do things that are going to be projecting, hopefully, into that next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And if you're really lucky, then what you're going to have is the equipment or the infrastructure to be able to do more things with whatever business you're in. So I started building through this 120 plus selections, and I found one real big difficulty. Everybody did almost everything. So that meant I might have to have multiple vendors, and that's a pretty difficult thing to deal with, because being a smaller institution, you're really faced with budget all the time, and you're also faced with being able to have manageability, because even if you can afford to buy it, you might not be able to afford to maintain it. And those are two of the biggest questions that you could have, especially as an information officer or executive. I started going through software, hardware, agentless, server solutions, just about in the cloud. I mean, everything was optional. You could go out and really create whatever solution you wanted from a vast vendor list. And I quickly came down to that basically, you know, below 50, and then a little bit later I got finally down below 20. But once I got into that 10 range, it was getting pretty difficult to pick out what vendor was going to be able to give me what I wanted, which was everything. I had Barrier in this as from the very start, and I made contact with the Barrier group. We started discussing what the Barrier products could do, and what I found is more so not just what they could do, which was very open, but what they could do for me in the future. And I think that was one of the most decision-making parts I had to take into granted when selecting them as my top three. And I obviously had in the top three some of the big brand names, because you have to have a benchmark. If you're going to basically sit there, because this is almost 4 years ago, if you're going to sit there and you're going to try to produce a vendor product into a realm that's already established by some very, very big names, you have to have the benchmark to which to hold them to, and then you have to turn around and do the cross-comparison list. And pleasantly, I was surprised that I was not only able to get 80% of what I wanted done at that time with one vendor, which was the Barrier, but I was also able to basically forecast into the future. And since that time frame, we've been addressing all of these things, everything right on up to basically security, incident, and event management, which it was a hard one to forecast, because even now people are confused with it. And as you can see, we have our barriers right here at what we would refer to as our head end. We do all our due diligence with all our vendors, and we have elected to basically co-locate all of our equipment into a nice center that's got all of the business continuity, all of the protection, everything from power, fire, theft, any type of basically events of nature. And at the very head of that, we have a pair of our Barrier products, which are basically setting aside in a hot spare environment, and they're load balancing, protecting us. If one would fail, one actually is fully capable of sustaining all of our operations and the operations of some of our sister institutions. I think that going into the future is the hard part in information technology. When they change, we have to be able to be flexible enough to do it, and we have now found that with staying with Barrier and working with Barrier, we've been able to adapt to literally every one of those changes. The salesmanship of a product like this is pretty difficult internally. There's several layers of management and executive level that they all want basically to make sure they can go home at night and sleep. And they want to understand what those layers that are out there or different aspects of threats that exist. And what we have in our networking world is we do have layers. We have layers that are clearly identified as physical and data and application and transport. We're looking at all these layers that if something does happen in those layers environment and it's happening where it shouldn't or when it shouldn't be, we should be able to have a sensor that can read up on that, pick up on that, report on that, and even basically not only alert, but react, do something. Potentially shutting down the interface on what would be the unit, or on maybe a switch, which is basically how you're going to gain access to the network. Basically shutting the door and locking it, and then alerting someone to say, you know what, we noticed we had some basically weird behavior, strange behavior, didn't quite match what we have as a pattern. So we took some action, and now we just wanted to let you know. And I said that's quite a comfort, but quite a challenge. And once again, our Barrier product could do that. So we've continually been able to advance, go forward in almost time, and forecast what we might expect as a security threat. And because of basically our vendor due diligence up front, our selection process, and because of the capabilities right within the Barrier product itself, we've been able to react and be able to put those in place and protect ourselves from areas that are invisible. Now the nice thing is that we also are able to explain them to the executive level. The Barrier products likely been probably the only affordable available solution that we could actually not only start with, but grow with, as well as expand as needed. That's the one part of what would be the executive level that people are very appreciative of, and that would be its affordability and manageability. I believe in the future there's going to be a ton of unforeseen threats. They could be within those layers that we already are aware of, but they could be growing because of the developments that take place on the internet. We have more software as a service based solutions that are out there where we really don't have basically our applications right on our desktop. We have our applications somewhere in the cloud, meaning out in the internet. And you know what, the nice comfort is that with our discussions with Barrier, that's exactly where they see the forecast too, and they're protecting against that. So our future, we believe, is safe, and our future is definitely at least manageable and affordable using our Barrier products.